So what would happen if, perchance, the Catholic Church down the road started reading all their history books, and they decided, you know what, we're not doing it right. This isn't the way our forefathers did it. We need to start checking these people out, these citizens around here, making sure that they're abiding by, our code that of course, we had 200 years ago. It's not the code now, but the code that we had 200 years ago. But you know how denominations can go, and of course, many cults rise within this nation because we have that liberty, we have that freedom. What would happen if, let's say, a Catholic Church, for instance, decided that they want to go back to their roots? Not, I guess, their roots, but their roots, let's say, 200 years ago, when they were still imposing their laws and their jurisdictions over the citizens.
Well, that's because the rule of law is established. Anything they would do to, let's say, become insurrectionist in our culture, would be perceived as that. It would be perceived as any militant group or subversive group who would take action against our nation. It would become what we call today modern term terrorism. For example, if they went in an organized strategic approach to directly approach citizens, which they would violate our Bill of Rights.
Of course.
They knocked on our door to ask us questions and to initiate an inquisition or summons us to appear before their religious leaders, and then begin to exercise or execute their judgments against us. For example, a stoning in the streets, or a public whipping of someone, or scourging. That citizen would be able to trump the entire Catholic tradition, and even in this country, especially here, all in the name of rule of law. But as you said, that's perhaps the theoretical hypothesis that atheists today constantly resurrect and project upon our culture to say, this is why we need to be against religion, because they're historical atrocities. What about religion's track record of no historical atrocities? For some time now, we've not opined the true and living deity as the one who's brought this under check and balance. And having checked and balanced it, we are not in an adversarial relationship with any, and especially today, religion in our nation, expressed however variegated it may be, is not an adversarial relationship with our state.
That's right.
So, again, you point out a great hypothesis, if you will, or theoretical construct that atheists today suggest, that somehow these religious people are telling us what to think. You won't tell someone that's a student of the Scriptures what to think, because they've already been scripted. You won't tell the Puritans, early Baptists, Calvinists, any of the literate Christians in our nation, especially those that understand resistance theology, which came directly out of the Old Testament scripts, those that understand that to wage a warfare is to more often lose, meaning we were willing to lose our physical lives to champion the absolute freedoms that we were taught. And we are not pacifists. We're much more than that. We would rather not, if you want to quench the sword, if you will, in its process of tempering it and all of that, the best quench oil is the blood of innocence. And that is not to take that blood, but for us to be willing to give it and to shed it in the face of tyranny. Now, having done that, we disgrace all the blood of the martyrs, the trail of tears, the trail of blood, all the sacrifices. We disgrace the Holocaust. We disgrace the Inquisition. We disgrace everything that the victims of such things endured, when we would then not see that it's been brought under check and balance, and then reinforce the rule of law.
Now, this is interesting, because we see here man propagating these injustices, these mass injustices, such as the Holocaust, such as anything that you can think about, all these religious injustices, and these are put out there. But now, as we see them now, they're very disgraced, very disgraced. But what has changed that mind of these same people that were once doing stuff like that? The same Catholic Church that was once doing stuff like that, killing the innocents, the same Muslims that were once going out there and being terrorists. Of course, we still have that to deal with in a smaller sense, but nothing like it used to be.
Oh, no.
But yeah, what changed it? How come that injustice that injustice that they first propagated, they're now in turn seeing it as an injustice, and they're working on behalf of justice to make sure that that never will happen again? What's pushing them to do that?
Well, and that's what I emphasize in the book in the first place.
Yeah,
is that what's being the invisible hand, if you will, as we speak of in the economy, for example, those of us who believe in a free market.
Yeah.
For example, politically, I'm a libertarian.
Okay.
But not the libertarian that others would say. I'm speaking of the historical libertarianism upon which most of our nation's freedoms have been established and correspond to.
Okay.
Now, though I'm a libertarian politically, I like the party system, check and balance.
Of course.
And, of course, I like the representation by the people. But I really despise the ignorance, the willingness to ignore that there is a power that has brought all these things, as you said. We've gone from a historical, atrocious, if you will, track record in Catholicism that atheism today still mocks and holds up as an example.
Like they're still doing it.
Exactly, but they're not doing it.
That's right.
So we're ignoring the deity who suppressed it. The atheists, the militant atheists in our nation today, and even around the world, who are encroaching upon the dialogue. Even one of the atheists said he believes in conversational intolerance. I guess he can presume the right to intolerate my conversation, but he would have a difficult time with someone who's truly of the construct Jehovah, because we would laugh at the face of his intolerance of our conversation, because it's our conversation that has now provided him the area to even have a dialogue. He couldn't even have a published book today,
right?
Because the Catholic, Protestant, and Judaic religions, if you will, that once had direct access to the free citizens would have checked and balanced him personally.
Right.
So you might say the Richard Dawkins or Sam Harrises of our modern culture today would have not been free to speak, but for the ones who were the victims of the atrocities. So they can speak against religion all they want, but they don't want to talk about those of us who were the victims of it. Those of us who descend from it and are related to those who were never part of the established religious orders, of which they have plenty to say. They never accredit our sacrifices as the basis upon which now we have the freedom and have brought under the rule of law these religious orders, because it was the people who were labeled a witch who died is why we don't hunt witches. It were people who were labeled heretics and then subsequently killed is why we no longer have heresiology going on, where we study to see who is categorically now labeled a heretic so that we can then punish them. We're free to think, believe, hold the view, and understand and construct in our mind any idea we wish, and to have a conversation. So even Sam Harris, one of the militant atheists who has become more in the minds of the ignorant than anyone who's actually read scripts would even indulge. If he even, as he's begun to speak about conversational intolerance, that's the most ignorant suggestion and assertion.
Because what would you talk about then? For him, what would he talk about if there wasn't any conversational intolerance? What would be there for him? There would be nothing for him.
Well, he's practicing the very thing that the religion that he says he's not of.
That's right.
Once enforced, because you can go through history and find people were told what they could and could not say. Freedom of speech is not the first inalienable right acknowledged by our nation by coincidence. It's first and foremost because everything began with our conversation. So when he thinks he's come up and crafted this neat little package or concept called conversational intolerance, he's only at the precursor of what?
Certainly.
Well, you can go back to the Nazis. They began with a great idea of conversational intolerance. And then eventually, when you're told what you can say or not say, and then they tell us what we can think or not think.
Then there's repercussions. So
they're on the same path.
That tolerance switches over instantly to intolerance.
Well, he already started, though. He said conversational intolerance.
Oh, he already started intolerance.
He's already said it. He's already initiated his new war now. And I think it's wonderful that an atheist is now taking the position of the former religionists. Who were once out from under the rule of law. Well, now, this man's off the script.
Well, if he can't find anybody to say, hey, you're not killing anybody, then I guess he would take that that job.
Well, I mean, he has to, because the militant atheists have actually placed themselves now. They're telling us what we can and can't believe. It's so funny because that's what all the religions once did historically.
That's what they once. Oh,
and
I like
since
that.
the void's there, the market's wide open, so you can see why they would approach it. I mean, I don't blame them from a business viewpoint. It's hilarious to see these men moving into an open market. It's just that, well, we laugh about it.
Yeah.
Because it's laughable to me. And even when you go and aggrandize some Richard Dawkins, he doesn't care. I mean, he's making money on his books, but as far as we who read the scripts, you couldn't talk to a Calvinist, a Puritan, an early Baptist, and even cause us to seriously entertain. I mean, I hate to even be tickled now because I don't want to diminish someone, but it's the only reason they say such ridiculous things is because they're ridiculous people.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, it may be dangerous that we have these religious thoughts. Well, religious thought, of freedom of speech, was not a Catholic, Protestant, or Judaic thought. Those were the thoughts that have brought even Catholicism into the Protestantism, which Protestantism has now, from its historical beginnings, has now found itself very much instrumental in our established rule of law. But it is hilarious. Someday I hope to come back and talk about the militant atheism and the educated.
The very idea is that
that's your phone.
That is my phone.
You'll edit this, right?